Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 16 2017 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this week, it was a mixed bag of results. By far, against the spread, I did horribly. I went 5-9-2 against the spread, which equals about 36%. It was a weird mix because there were games such as Miami and Green Bay where I took the underdog just win, and it came down to close opportunities with the Packers and Panthers game, where even though Rodgers threw 3 picks, the most in a game since 2009, they ended up getting an onside kick at the end of the game, but then Geronimo Allison fumbled the ball, which gave the Panthers the victory. So I had them +3, they lost by 7. Then you had, of course, the Dolphins-Bills game, where that was just kind of classic Dolphins. After such a great game in New England 2 Mondays ago, they go into Buffalo and they just play their erratic, inconsistent selves. And Cutler throws 2 horrible interceptions, which could have got them in the game or won the game. But Tyrod Taylor had another solid game. He had about 220 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. Played, very efficient, very Tyrod Taylor type football. And I'm going to congratulate Sean McCoy for surpassing 10,000 yards for a career. So kudos to him. So that was interesting. The huge spreads, I told people to take the underdogs on, the Bengals and Texans. They both didn't come through in the obvious ways. I put too much faith in TJ Yates, who looked like an absolute scrub. They've got blown up by 38 points to the Jaguars, who, when Blake Bortles doesn't turn the ball over, they average 8.5 points per game on defense. And for the Jags, they had their first 10-win season since 2007 and their first playoff berth since 2007. So congratulations to them. And Clowney, just a message to Davion Clowney, the Jags and Blake Bortles is not trash. He put up 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. And for this month, he has the best stats in terms of wins, yards per game, and yards per attempt in the NFL this month. So that's not trash. So congrats to the Jags and Vikings. And the Vikings clinched the NFC North for the second time in 4 years. And then I told people, well, the one game where I felt really confident with the favorite was the Saints, but the Jets ended up hanging around too long, and they were able to cover the 16-point spread. They lost by 12, so that counts. But, there was that. The Atlanta game was closer than I thought, and then you had 2 pushes with the Patriots-Steelers, which was the game of the year in my opinion, and then you had the Raiders-Cowboys, which the two of the most controversial rules in the NFL came through. The Pats-Steelers one was the catch rule, and the other one was the fumble rule. I don't like either of them, really, but at the same time, those were the right calls. And it wasn't like Jenkins where you could, you really couldn't see the evidence on the field. You could see Carr's hand after Jeff Heath hit him out of the end zone. The ball clearly came out of his hand and went through the end zone. So that was a touchback. And it wasn't controversial either, like the time KJ Wright batted the ball out of the end zone, which you can't do. So there's my explanation on the bad side. However, with all those games, even though I took the underdogs to cover against the spread, I did take the favorites to win straight up. So I went 13-3 straight up. And now overall for the year against the spread, I am below 500 for the first time in several weeks. I am 107-108-8 against the spread, which equals 49.8%. And straight up, I am now 149-75, which equals 66.5%. Very good straight up numbers for me. At 67, 68, even 69% range is still intact with 2 weeks to go for full games. I could still maybe get there with the postseason as well. Postseason games are harder. It's harder and easier. You got more competitive teams, but you have less games to pick, so that could help. So that's my little quick rundown, and I'll probably make some points throughout the rest of this video. But it's time for my picks. So, on Friday, December 23rd, when the 4-10 Indianapolis Colts... when the 3-11 Indianapolis Colts go to the 8-6 Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens are 13.5-point favorites in this game. I like Indianapolis here, plus 13.5, but I will take the Baltimore Ravens straight up. Then the next game, when the 11-3 Minnesota Vikings go to the 7-7 Green Bay Packers. The Minnesota Vikings are 8.5-point favorites in this game. I like Minnesota here, minus 8.5, and Minnesota straight up. Then on Sunday, Christmas Eve, when the 4-10 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 10-4 Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are 10-point favorites in this game. I like Tampa Bay here plus 10, but I will take the Carolina Panthers straight up. Then the next game, when the 0-14 Cleveland Browns go to the 4-10 Chicago Bears, the Chicago Bears are 6.5 point favorites in the game. I like Chicago here minus 6.5, and Chicago straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-6 Detroit Lions go to the 5-9 Cincinnati Bengals, the Detroit Lions are 5 point favorites in this game. I like Detroit here minus 5, and Detroit straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-8 Miami Dolphins go to the 8-6 Kansas City Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs are 10 point favorites in this game. I like the Miami Dolphins here plus 10, but the Kansas City Chiefs straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-6 Buffalo Bills go to the 11-3 New England Patriots, the New England Patriots are 11.5 point favorites in this game. I like Buffalo here plus 11.5, but New England straight up. Then the next game, when the 9-5 Atlanta Falcons go to the 10-4 New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Saints are 5.5 point favorites in this game. I like Atlanta here plus 5.5, but New Orleans straight up. Then the next game, when the 7-7 Los Angeles Chargers go to the 5-9 New York Jets, the LA Chargers are 6.5 point favorites in this game. I like the LA Chargers here minus 6.5, and the LA Chargers straight up. Then the next game, when the 10-4 LA Rams go to the 8-6 Tennessee Titans, the LA Rams are 6.5 point favorites in their game, and I like the LA Rams here minus 6.5, and the LA Rams straight up. Then the next game, when the 5-9 Denver Broncos go to the 6-8 Washington Redskins, the Washington Redskins are 3.5 point favorites in this game. I like Washington here minus 3.5, and Washington straight up. Then the next game, when the 10-4 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 4-10 San Francisco 49ers, the Jacksonville Jaguars are 4.5 point favorites in this game. I like Jacksonville straight up, but I will take the San Francisco 49ers plus 4.5. Then the next game, when the 2-12 New York Giants go to the 6-8 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 3.5 point favorites in this game. I like the New York Giants here plus 3.5, but the Arizona Cardinals straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-6 Seattle Seahawks go to the 8-6 Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Cowboys are 4.5 point favorites in this game. I like Dallas here minus 4.5, and Dallas straight up. And then on Monday, Christmas Day, when the 11-3 Pittsburgh Steelers go to the 4-10 Houston Texans, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 8.5 point favorites in this game. I like Pittsburgh here minus 8.5, and Pittsburgh straight up. And finally, in the nightcap, when the 6-8 Oakland Raiders go to the 12-2 Philadelphia Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles are 9 point favorites in this game. I like the Eagles here straight up, but I will take the Oakland Raiders plus 9. Alright, so time for my thoughts on each game. The Ravens over the Colts. This is a game where the Ravens have done very well beating sub-500 football teams. It's really nothing to be impressed about. You know, we shut out the Bengals. We beat the Browns by 10. We shut out the Dolphins. We shut out the Packers. We beat the Browns by 17 last week. We beat the Texans by 7. This is what the Ravens do. And the Colts, you know, they're really not that healthy right now. You know, Frank Gore is really their positive story. You know, getting 5th all-time in rushing, having a career high just 2 weeks ago in rushes at age 34. It's quite an amazing season he's having. And also, he only joins Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton. Like I said, he only joins Emmitt Smith as the only running back to lead his team in rushing for 13 or more consecutive seasons. So good for him. But it's one of those things where the Colts, like, they have flashes, Brissett's shown flashes, but that's really nothing that should be able to contain this Ravens defense to be able to smother them and to contain their offense. Because really their only big offensive weapon is T.Y. Hilton. If we double him, the Colts really have nobody else to throw to. Maybe Jack Doyle, Chester Rogers. But Moncrief's been, kind of in and out of an injury. And Kamar Aikens, they're one of our former players, but he really wasn't that good even as a Raven. And I just think the Ravens, with the home game, also, it's always fun for the Ravens fans because the Colts were the former Baltimore Colts. We never really put Colts on the scoreboard. We always say visitor. That's a little fun thing for Baltimore. I just think we should be able to pull out a good victory. The only reason why I'm taking the Colts to lay the points is because I do not expect us to be able to score that many points with Jerry Maclin having an injury. he is trying to practice, but all indications are he's probably going to be out this game, which is a huge blow to our offense because it's really him and Ben Watson who's been the predominant guys of our offense. And Mike Wallace, he's had decent games, and Flacco's played more efficiently. Not great, but efficiently. But I don't think if we lose Macklin, they can just kind of control on Wallace and, put a good safety over Watson, and I don't think we're going to be able to put up that many points. Alex Hollins, is a very good running back. He's been the running back to emerge as our number one back, and we should re-sign him to a long-term deal with how he's been playing. However, I feel like for the Ravens, they're going to control the run and force Flacco to throw, and with the limited weapons we have and the lack of weapons we have on the outside, the receivers, I don't think we'll be able to blow out or get a decisive win over the Colts. We should win, but we won't get a decisive win just because of the lack of talent on offensively that we will have on during the game. Good luck to Pagano. I think Chuck Pagano was gone after this year. It's the right time to do it, but I think that Colts job, it's not a bad job to have if you can deal with Jim Irsay, which is not that many people can. You have a franchise quarterback, you have a new general manager, you have a lot of cap room, and you have a very winnable division. That would be one of the jobs I would consider most certainly to try to put my stake in. So that's why I like Indianapolis here plus 13.5, but the Baltimore Ravens straight up. Next game, Minnesota over the Packers. Congrats to Minnesota. It was their first, division title since 2014. And the second time in 4 years they've won it. Case Keenum in another efficient game. And the game got so out of hand that Teddy Bridgewater was able to come back in for his first game since the wild card game back in 2016. So I was really happy for him. He did throw an interception, but nobody really cared. And but it was just good to see Teddy out there. And I know for him that was a huge day just because he finally got to get into a game as a NFL quarterback once again. But the Vikings defense smothered the Bengals. They had two or three huge turnovers. They were able to run the ball. And by the end of the game, they were just gashing them up the gut with runs and efficient passes. The one Kyle Rudolph touchdown that they got in was wide open. So the Vikings, again, they're playing their style of football. It's not beat themselves. It's very good offense with great defense, elite defense to win games. And I think with Aaron Rodgers and the Packers being officially eliminated from playoff contention, they put Aaron Rodgers on the IR yesterday. And so it's going to be Brent Hundley playing the Vikings. And the last time Brent Hundley played the Vikings after Rodgers went down to an injury back in Week 5, he threw 3 interceptions and looked awful. Do I think he will look as bad this time? No. Because he at least hasn't been in games with this Packers offense, and he knows how to play with them. And he's at least improved over the last few weeks of yards, and he's had his moments. I don't think he's going to play as bad, but I don't think the Packers are going to nearly score as many points as if they had Aaron Rodgers out there on offense. It was the right decision by the Packers to make because the Packers are not playing for anything, so why risk injuring your quarterback against a team that injured him several weeks ago? Again, it's a division game, so you can throw the records out the window. Those guys will be motivated. But I think the Vikings, look, they know that they can clinch a first-round bye if Carolina loses, but they're still trying to play for something. So those guys are going to be motivated, and it's been a very long time since I believe... Well, no, it's been a couple years. It's very rare that the Vikings are able to sweep the Packers during this rivalry in the Aaron Rodgers era, and that would be a significant victory for the Vikings to have, just to be able to say they did it. Should be an interesting game, and I think with the Vikings, with their confidence, with how Keenum's playing, with how efficient they've been, and with the loss of Aaron Rodgers to the IR, this should be a good win for the Vikings and an easy win. So that's why I like Minnesota here, minus 8.5, and Minnesota straight up. Next game, Buccaneers over Panthers over Tampa Bay. Carolina is a team that is very inconsistent. I probably would say out of all the playoff teams, out of all the contending teams, this is the one team I've had the most trouble picking over the season because they started out really well, then they got, some low lights, but then they had some highlights, but their play was just so erratic. I thought over the last 2 weeks, okay, they'll lose to a Viking team, which I thought was, very good. They're still very good. And they would lose to a Packer team of Aaron Rodgers trying to play for something. Obviously, I was wrong over the last couple of weeks. I've been wrong on more Panther games than I would like to be. But I think with Carolina, they are playing a style of football that can be effective. And also, you should be impressed with them because, again, Funchess has been up and down. They don't have Curtis Samuel or Kelvin Benjamin. They're throwing the guys to Deion Bird and Shepard. Russell Shepard, there we go, that's his name. Russell Shepard along with Greg Olsen. Kudos to Greg Olsen for scoring his first touchdown, by the way. And this Panther team is just a very solid, fundamental team. Remember, they got 3 picks on Aaron Rodgers. Congrats to Colin Jones, Bradbury, and then I forget the other guy who got the third interception, but good for those guys. And this is a Panther team that they are better than how they are playing. I guess that's what I've seen over this year. They can play their way of football, and they will cause turnovers and havoc, which will let Cam and this offense get shorter fields with the dynamic ability of him and McCaffrey and Greg Olsen. They're able to make chunk plays, and then when they need you to, they'll surprise you with the Birds and the Shepherds catching touchdowns because nobody will pay attention to them. And then when you look at Tampa, Tampa's the more talented team on paper, even though right now they don't have Levante David or Gerald McCoy, and Doug Martin sat out the last game for a team violation. But this is just one of those games where, again, the Panthers, they've been clearly the better team. The last time they played this team in Tampa, they won by 14 points. They held the Bucs offense to 3 points at a much healthier point. And if the Panthers can beat the Packers and Vikings at home in their last couple of games, they definitely can do it against the Buccaneers. It should be a competitive game because the Buccaneers showed you anything on Monday night. They're still playing and they're still being competitive. O.J. Howard went out for the game, but they still had Cameron Brader make plays. Mike Evans had a huge touchdown catch. And they were still able to run the ball even with Peyton Barber, a decent running back that when he's had his opportunities has played, okay. But I'm going to take the Panthers here because what I've seen out of the Bucs over the last several weeks is that even though they are being competitive in a lot of their games, they're not being able to close games, unlike the Panthers. The Panthers have been in a lot of competitive games as well. Look at the Packers, look at the Vikings, look at New England. Look at this year. They've been in a lot of close competitive games. But the one thing the Panthers have been able to do is that when it is time to close the game and get the victory, Cam and this team know how to do it, and I think they will do it again against a division rival that is still being feisty to show pride. So that's all I like. Tampa Bay here +10, but Carolina straight up. Next game, the Bears over the Browns. The Browns have a better chance of winning this game than people think because the Bears really aren't that good. The Bears defense has some talent. It has Eddie Jackson. It has Eddie Goldman. It has Akeem Hicks. It has trying to think of some other good defensive players on this. It has Trevathan. It has Kyle Fuller. It has some decent people. It has Adrian Amos. It has some good defensive core pieces. But the problem is, and they can run the ball with Howard and Cohen, probably the best two-headed monster outside of New Orleans in the NFL. However, the problem is they have Trubisky at quarterback. And Trubisky, even though he's had his flashes of competitiveness, he's had his flashes of athleticism, he's had his flashes of, franchise quarterback ability, he's still a rookie. And he still is making rookie decisions and rookie mistakes that I think the Browns can capitalize on. The problem is the Browns also have a rookie quarterback in DeShone Kizer, who, has played more effectively, but he's still turning the ball over way too much. And at the end of the day, I'm going to take the better team. I think the Browns, could have a chance to beat the Bears. They almost had a chance to beat Brent Hundley and the Packers. I think Trubisky has a little more potential than Hundley, but it's not that much difference right now between Brent Hundley and Mitchell Trubisky's play. And also, the Bears don't have really that much of an offense, and the Browns' defense at least does have pieces on it which are talented. And they can contain the Bears' receiving core. It's just all going to come down to the Cleveland defensive line and the Chicago defensive line. Can the Browns stop? The Browns defensive line has to deal with Howard and Cohen. The Bears secondary has to deal with Josh Gordon. If whoever has more of an impact on the game, I believe will win the game. If Josh Gordon has a monster game, I think the Browns will win this game. If Howard and Cohen can run the ball and even for Cohen return and catch well, I think the Bears will win this game. and I believe more in the Bears' offense and defensive fronts to stop those methods of offense compared to the Browns' defense. Again, I think Hugh Jackson, who will lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers next week, to go 0-16, I believe he deserves to get fired because there is nobody that can tell me that an 0-16 season, he actually deproved. He actually decreased his value with the Browns, which is amazing when you have a 1-win total as your benchmark. And I would be angry if I were Pat Shurmur, Butch Davis, Eric Mangini, Rob Chadinsky, and Mike Pettin. I would be angry for all those guys. Because if you're going to tell me that all those guys who had spent 2 or less years with the Cleveland Browns, he gets a third year, that's offensive to those people. And you know what? Pat Shurmur, he's doing a really good job in Minnesota. Rob Chadinsky's, doing okay in Indianapolis. But you know what? The one thing's different. At least they have wins. Hugh Jackson only has 1 win. So I know he's going to stay, but Hugh Jackson does not deserve to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns next year because you cannot have 1 win and still remain your job for 2 years. I'm sorry. You could say, well, it's the process stuff. You know what? I hate that. You need to show improvement. And this Browns team had enough talent to show that, hey, we can at least win a game to 5 games this year. 0 is unacceptable. And the Browns are just the version of the Philadelphia 76ers, except the Browns suck worse. And as I've wanted, Brett Brown to get fired for a few years, I will now want Hugh Jackson's head every year that he's there as the head coach. He can be a coordinator. He's been a very good coordinator, but he does not deserve to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion. Sorry for that little diatribe, but I just wanted to make that point in my video. So that's why I like Chicago here, -6.5, and Chicago straight up. Next game, the Lions over the Bengals. This one is fairly easy. The Lions are the Lions. They play consistent football. They can beat bad teams. Stafford can make great throws. They really can't run the ball. They have the longest active streak of non-100-yard rushers. I think it's now up to 66 or 67 games. But the reason why I feel so confident in the Lions is the Bengals have quit. Over the last 2 weeks against 2 NFC teams, you could give them a little bit of a pass to the Vikings, but still that doesn't discredit their own effort against the Vikings, and definitely the Bears. They've lost 34-7 and 36-7, I believe. Yeah, over the last 2 weeks, they've been absolutely blown out by 2 teams. Tyler Kroft is dropping passes, and AJ Green even admitted this week that they haven't been able to. Some of them haven't been able to get past that Marvin Lewis is leaving after this year to explore other opportunities. I believe that's just PR speak to say that they fired him. But I just think, again, the Bengals are just waiting to get this year over with, and then they all can look at their own futures and say, where are we going to be? The only guys I think that are going to be safe are AJ Green and Vontaze Burfict, even though you could argue Vontaze should get shipped. But I think those are the 2 anchors on the offense and defense that the Bengals are going to want to keep for their complete rebuild that they're going to start next year. And, with that being said, again, I think the Lions, look, they realize that if the Falcons lose out and they can win out, they will get the 6th seed. So they're going to play this game tough. I think the Lions can, play efficient football. Maybe the Bengals, with being their final home game, maybe they give Marvin one last big hoorah, one nice final moment. Hopefully, they don't end the year with just 4 consecutive blowouts to really send Marvin out on a bad note. I don't know. Maybe they don't care. But I think the Lions, though, should be able to play an efficient, very good game up to their style to where they should be able to win by the same range they did against the Bears last week, which was 10 points. They could win between 7 to 14, which covers the 5-point spread. And I also do want to say this. For Jim Caldwell, it's funny. Marvin Lewis was a guy that people maligned for constantly making the playoffs and not winning games. You notice that, Jim Caldwell? You're the next Marvin Lewis, sir. You are the next Marvin Lewis, because if the Lions can't win a playoff game this year, you really need to get Jim Caldwell on the hot seat saying this is unacceptable. I know you're the Lions. I know and shout out to Half Moon's Picks, another prog. I know it's great to make the playoffs, but you need to eventually say to your guys, hey, we can win these playoff games, or we have to win these playoff games. And you can't just say, well, we don't have enough talent. It's not good enough, because it's just like Cincinnati. It's not good enough to just constantly make the playoffs and not win anything. So, if Jim Caldwell, if he gets in, good for him, and he'll keep his job. But you should put more scrutiny on him if he doesn't win. Because this team, at least, doesn't have nearly as many injuries. And if he's a good enough coach, you should be able to win maybe a game against the Rams, against, these better teams eventually. You can't just scoot by going off of your reputation, just being happy. Because you know what? That was what the Bengals fans were doing. And every year that it went on, it got more frustrating. So I just want to say that to Jim Caldwell. You're going to become the next Marvin Lewis. So that's why I like Detroit, you're -5, and Detroit straight up. Next game, the Chiefs over Miami. I am really angry about this because I was a guy that, as I've gone through my videos and over the last few years, I've become a big Chiefs supporter. I've always appreciated what Alex Smith has done as a quarterback, the efficient game winner that wasn't paid much and that can put your team in good spots every year. And I like that, and I respected that. And through the first 5 weeks of the year, they were the best team in the NFL. However, after that, they went on a horrible stretch where the Chiefs' aura came back to them. They had the tipped possible interception against the Steelers. They had the 2 holding penalties against the Raiders. The Cowboys game is really the only game where they got decisively beaten. The Giants game, they had that huge catch by Roger Lewis, which shouldn't have happened. And the Jets game, they had Marcus Peters get ejected and Alex Smith not being able to close the deal. And they also gave up 38 points to the New York Jets. Like, I look at this Chief team, but again, after that happened, or during the Jets game, Andy Reid gave up offensive play calling duties to Matt Nagy, who, since he's been the coordinator for the Chiefs, he's been able to put up 34 points against the Jets, 26 against Oakland, and 30 against the LA Chargers. Kareem Hunt looks like himself again, and this Chief offense is playing like it did earlier this year, and I feel the confidence coming back into them. So it's really frustrating that, again, why couldn't they have made this move sooner so they could have maybe had a better record and I could have felt more confident about this team. But I digress. But again, the Chiefs are flying really high. They're playing really well. Tyreek Hill had another bomb touchdown in the game. Marcus Peters had a huge 2-interception game. And the Chiefs forced 4 consecutive turnovers on 4 consecutive Charger drives, which was impressive. However, like when I look at the Chiefs, I'm going to take the Dolphins here against the spread because the Dolphins have been so erratic that I think, again, in this situation, they're going to have a better game. I just think the Dolphins, they'll play up to their Dolphin potential, which is not necessarily like, New England good, but they'll play well enough to stay around the game. And even with all the mistakes the Dolphins had against the Bills, they ended up losing that game by 8 points, which would cover the 10-point spread. Unless Peters returns a pick 6, or Reeves returns a pick 6, or Sorensen returns a pick 6, which could happen, by the way, because Cutler has been very well known to do that. I just think, again, the Chiefs should win the game. It's a fairly easy game. The Dolphins' defense is not that good. And Kareem Hunt should have another great game with his offensive system. The Miami secondary isn't that talented. And Travis Kelce up the middle going... Again, Rashad Jones, congrats to making the Pro Bowl. But I will take Travis Kelce over Rashad Jones in this matchup. And the Chiefs should win. The only reason why I'm taking Miami against the spread is because Miami's so erratic, I can't really trust them to not play well. Like, when we all think, okay, the Chiefs should be able to blow out the Dolphins. I don't think that. I think the Dolphins, they've shown that even when they're, on their bad games or in their erratic play, they can cover a 10-point spread. Just look at the game against Buffalo. Look at the game against the Raiders. That's what happens. Like, they have their moments when they look like they did against Baltimore and Carolina. But besides that, they've been able to play weirdly competitive in mostly every other game. So that's why I like Miami here +10, but Kansas City straight up. Next game, Patriots over Buffalo. The New England Patriots won the game of the year off the right call by Jesse James touchdown. And here is, people are angry that Jesse James rule is there. But it's the right rule because the ground you cannot have the ball hit the ground, and you cannot let go of the ball on the impact of the ground, or that's an incompletion. That was the rule. Like, that was the right ruling to make, and I want to commend Tony Romo for making that call in the game, just so when you see it in slow motion, that was right. Because when you see plays like that, and they've consistently called that play. Calvin Johnson, Austin Severian-Jenkins, Dez Bryant, Tyler Eifert, you know, again, the only play you could argue that people could say is Golden Tate. But again, at the same time, Golden Tate, for at least a second, had the ball in his hand and didn't bobble it until contact. And that was the point. As soon as he had the ball, for that split second, that split nanosecond he was in the end zone, that was the touchdown. When Trevathan hit him and caused the turnover, that didn't matter. See, there's the thing. Jesse James was not down. He went down in his own power, and as he was going down with the ball, he stretched out and the ball hit the turf. You can't do that. He just needed to cradle the ball in because that's all he had to do. If he fell over the line with the ball cradled, that would have been a touchdown because his body and the ball were over the line where his knee was. So that's the thing. You don't need to dive out that way. And the Patriots players have apparently been practicing that situation, and Belichick won't allow it to happen. So that's just kind of the smart coaching of it. However, at the same time, you can look at the Patriots, team and say, look, Chris Hogan wasn't there. They didn't have Alan Branch there, and they've been banged up. So, and again, really the only guy that had a great game was Rob Gronkowski, who, coming back from suspension, was the Steeler record again because he, has 9 receptions, 166 yards, and a touchdown. So again, he wrecked the game for the Steelers. But the reason why I'm taking the Patriots to win is because again they're playing in their division, and Brady is again 27-3 all time against Buffalo. Even though Buffalo in 2 of the last 4 years has beaten 2 of the last 3 seasons they've beaten the Patriots in New England, but there were different circumstances in both those senses. Last year was the last game of 4-game suspension, where after Edelman had that 90-yard touchdown return back, Belichick didn't care, and then the last professional win for Kyle Orton's career came in New England when they already had the number 1 seed locked up, and they put Jimmy Garoppolo in the second half. With that not being true right now, and with the Patriots still playing for the number 1 seed and home field advantage, they will play their starters, and they should be able to beat the Bills. But also, I think, again, the Bills, they are going to be in a spot, I believe, and this may be a preview for next week, let's see how the games go, where the Bills are going to miss the playoffs because of one game, the LA Chargers game, the infamous Tyrod benching. Because I feel like the Chargers, they have a good chance to win out. If the Bills lose and they beat Miami, the Chargers will be 9-7, the Bills will be 9-7. The Chargers will get in over the Bills because of that head-to-head victory and Sean McDermott's decision for sitting Tyrod Taylor. I don't know if the Chargers still, with how that score was, I still think the Chargers would have won. But Bills fans can always say, we would have had a much better chance to win, and some of them will think we could have won if Sean McDermott did not bench Tyrod Taylor. That's going to be the point of the Bills, that drought still may continue because of that reason. But with the injuries to the Patriots, with how Tom Brady's playing, he's had 2 TDs, 3 interceptions over the last 3 games, and he's had this decline every December. And his defense really hasn't been that well. They let Juju Smith-Schuster have a 69-yard gain. And the Bills, have McCoy who can, run effectively. I think the Bills will be able to hang around a 11-point spread. Yep, and that's why. So that's why I'm taking Buffalo plus 11.5, but New England straight up. Next game, New Orleans over Atlanta. This is a game for me where I am taking the New Orleans Saints because they are at home. This game was so close. Just, 17, 16, 15, 13 days ago. This game was so close 13 days ago. It came down to Drew Brees trying to beat Deion Jones with Josh Hill in the end zone that cost him the game. And also Sean Payton going out on the sideline, but that's a totally different issue. But I feel like the Saints remember that, and they are angry about that because also they know Alvin Kamara will be back. Alvin Kamara, of course, went out the second play of the game with a concussion. I'm hoping he doesn't get hit. And the Saints know who, for the first time since like the 1970s, both Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara have made the Pro Bowl, which is an incredible feat, so kudos to them. But I'm taking the Saints to win this game because they are at home and they are motivated to win this game to show the Falcons that the last time they played them, that was just a fluky set of circumstances. And to show that the Saints have completely finished this turnaround and won this game off that way. That this turnaround will be complete. We will go from worst to first again. No, I'm sorry. Like, we will win the division for the first time in 5 years and show people that the Saints are all the way back and are in the playoffs for the first time since 2013. That motivation and that kind of situation should be enough for the Saints to win. I am going to take it to the Falcons plus 5.5 because the Falcons, they've had their runs this year, especially over the last several weeks where they've looked incredibly dominant, but also vulnerable. And I just think, again, if they play their game well enough, if the Falcons can cause enough havoc with that defensive line, and also the Saints lost A.J. Klein to IR this year for the rest of the year, I think the Saints will be able, I think the Falcons could pull this off. But I'm going to take the Saints here, trust the home field advantage, trust that Kamara can play, that is healthy and can fully play, and trust the motivation and trust the home field advantage. So that's why I like Atlanta here plus 5.5, but New Orleans straight up. Next game, the LA Chargers over the Jets. The Jets are a team that Todd Bowles will get a lot of credit for it because this is not a 5-10 football team. This is a 5-10 football team that is very good at one second. This is a 5-10 football team that is been very effective this year in a lot of their games. They've played very well with a lot of the injuries and the amount of talent that they just have. So good for them in that way. However, I'm going to take the Chargers here because this is what the Chargers have done really well all year long. They have been able to play effective games against below 500 teams. If you look at their record, they have 7 wins, and 5 of them are against below 500 teams. They only have 2 wins against above 500 teams, and that's Dallas and Buffalo. They're 2-5 against teams 500 above 500. They're 5-2 against teams 500 or below. So, with that being said, could the Jets be competitive? Sure. Bryce Petty, look, he had his best game as a pro, and the Jets, they can mess around, and that's also the Chargers. That if the Jets can cause a couple turnovers and they can take advantage, maybe the Chargers start choking again. But I just think, again, they're angry, they're motivated, and this Jet team is just clearly too depleted for me not to go with them in this situation. And again, like I said, I believe the LA Chargers will make the playoffs, and the first step they have to do with this is beat a Jet team that they are clearly better than in every position, and just handle their business going back into the Meadowlands. And do the reverse of what the Chiefs did this year, which is go into the Meadowlands twice and beat the Giants and Jets in their home stadium. So that's why I like the LA Chargers here minus 6.5, but the New York Jets straight up. Next game, the Rams over Tennessee. The LA Rams are a very talented football team. They are probably the most dangerous team in the NFC right now. Todd Gurley has 17 total touchdowns. He is an MVP candidate, and he is right now been the best running back in the NFL all year long. The Rams handed Seattle their worst loss under the Pete Carroll regime and one of their worst home losses in decades. And, again, this is the thing with the Rams. They got 7 sacks. They played sensational. And really, from the beginning of the game, you could say that the Rams were clearly the better football team. And, that's where I'm going with. The Titans are not very good. That is a fraudulent 8-6 record that could very well easily be 6-10, even 5-11, or I'm sorry, 8-6. It could be easily 6-8, 5-9, even 4-10 if 7 or 8 things don't go their way in 3 or 4 different games. The Titans are not that good. Even, again, Mariota played a decent game. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions at 230 yards. Decent game, but they really couldn't run the ball. And then when they had their opportunities, Jimmy Garoppolo ran right down the field, and Robbie Gould hit an easy 45-yard field goal for him. And by the way, Robbie Gould is having a career high in kicking percentage, so good for him. But that's the problem. And also you have idiots like Bryce McCain on their team who says, well, Jimmy Garoppolo isn't really that good. He threw to the open guys. That's the job of the quarterback, you idiot. No wonder why you're a scrub. You don't have the mind to be a very intelligent football player because everybody that understands football knows, yes, if you're the quarterback, you're supposed to throw to the open guy. You know what? If you could do your job and have less room so he doesn't look that wide open, then that's your fault, not his. But I digress. But that's the point. Like, people might feel like, for Titans fans, oh, this is great. The Rams are coming off a huge high. They just beat the Seattle Seahawks. They beat the brakes off them. They're not going to be motivated. Or they're going to feel like the Titans are going to be a pushover. I don't think they're going to think that way. And even if the Rams don't play nearly 100% motivated, the Titans at 110% motivated, I don't think it can beat this Rams team of how talented they are and the vast array of offense that you can see, the difference and creativity of this offense that the Rams have will shock the Titans' defense. And like Rashard Matthews says, they need to be less predictable and run more no-huddle. They were really effective in those no-huddle situations in the game against the Niners, but if you can lose to the cellar dwellers of the Cardinals and Niners in back-to-back weeks, you definitely can lose to the Rams, who are not only not the cellar dweller, the leader, but one of the best teams in the NFL, period. So that's why I like the LA Rams here, minus 6.5. And the LA Rams straight up. Then the next game, Washington over the Broncos. This is just like Washington, Arizona to me. The reason why I'm taking the Washington Redskins is Kirk Cousins. Like, both teams are, not very good teams. The Redskins have had better offensive abilities. The Broncos have had better defensive abilities. The flaws in their defense and offense have been shown throughout the year. But I can't trust Paxton Lynch. Simeon's out for the year. Osweiler could get the start, but they won Paxton the two final games, see if he can play well. He may get hurt again, and I just can't trust, just like I couldn't trust Blaine Gabbert to beat the Redskins, I'm going to use the same logic here, and I can't say I can't trust Paxton Lynch to beat the Redskins. That's it. I just can't trust them. Could the game be close? Absolutely. Kirk Cousins, he's had a decent year statistically, but he's had his moments where he hasn't looked good. He can throw interceptions against his secondary. And maybe Paxton can feel motivated to, try to show people that he's not an overall bust, which he is right now, obviously. But I'm taking Washington here is because of the better quarterback. The offense and defenses are basically the same to me in terms of their strengths and weaknesses, in terms of, the Redskins have a much stronger offensive core unit. The Broncos have a much stronger defensive core unit. But in that instance, I'm going to take the better quarterback and home field. And that's Washington for me. So that's why I like Washington minus 3.5 and Washington straight up. Next game, Jacksonville over San Francisco. This is one of those things where I've had this theory about the Jaguars. And this is a pretty accurate theory for the most part in terms of how the Jags are kind of this year, or this regular season. Every odd week, they have played spectacular, best team in the NFL type football. Houston 29-7, Baltimore 44-7, Pittsburgh 39, Indianapolis 27-0, Bengals 23-9, Colts 30-10, Texans 45-7. They have tremendous blowouts. That's about 5 or 6 blowouts in the odd weeks. The even weeks, Titans 37-16, Jets 23-20 over, 23-20 loss, Cardinals 27-24 loss, Rams 26-16. Chargers game, they could have lost that game. They should have lost that game. The Seahawks game, that game was basic. They were in control most of the game, but that game they collapsed and almost lost that one. So that's a theory with the Jags, that every odd week they play sensational football, and every even week they don't win the game and play horrible football, or they don't play as consistent football and barely win the game. So that's why I took the Niners. The Niners have been on an absolute roll. After starting on 0-9, they've won 4 of their last 5 games. Jimmy Garoppolo has, 6 TDs or 3 TDs, 2 interceptions. He's played good football. And I mean, again, the Niners can surprise the Jaguars. The Niners can surprise them with how good Jimmy's been, the lack of film they have on Garoppolo, and the confidence the Niners have right now. But I'm going to take the Jaguars because they have too much talent for me not to say that they can't shut down the Niners offense. Because the Niners really don't have an offense except without Jimmy G. If Carlos Hyde can have a good game, which has been the one Achilles heel for the Jaguars all year has been their run defense. Even though, again, their run defense played a lot better over the last few weeks. I just think, the Jaguars just have too much talent and too good of a defense because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo will be able to put up drives and be able to move the football down the field as effectively as he's been over the last 3 weeks. Because even against Chicago, that's the problem. Chicago, it was his first game. He really struggled. He didn't play that well, but he was playing Chicago's offense, and the Niners defense came off a huge stop. And Garoppolo got them in field position. I don't think Blake Bortles in this offense, the way I said earlier, he's not going to be able to get them in a 15-14 game. If the Niners are going to win this game, they're going to at least need, I believe, 20 to 27 points to win this game. And I don't think they're going to reach that mark. Maybe 20 if they're lucky, but I don't even think they're going to put up 20 points against this defense. And I feel like, again, with that being said, the Jaguars should be able to win this game because the Niners defense has a much harder challenge with the Jacksonville offense, especially with Leonard Fournette coming back. So that's why I like San Francisco here plus 4.5, but Jacksonville straight up. Next game, Cardinals over Giants. This is what I like to call crappy toss-up game of the week. I just hedged my bet here because honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody really cares about this game. Both teams are out of the playoffs. And I took the Giants because they played really well. And the Cardinals are making another quarterback change with Drew Stanton coming in there. But even with Drew Stanton in this offense right now, with the kind of misery they're going through, they could very easily lose this game to the Giants or just cover with a field goal. And that's what I'm just going to go with. I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants won this game. The Giants have a little bit more talent. They have a more experienced quarterback. And they're coming up possibly on the end of Eli Manning's career. Maybe they want to give him, one more sympathy win that, helps them out and helps Bruce Arians get out of the door faster. Maybe. But honestly, I just took the Cardinals here. They're at home. They've played much better football all year. And the Giants just at the tailspin that will finish at the end of the year against Washington. So who knows? So that's why I like the New York Giants here plus 3.5, but Arizona straight up. Next game, the Cowboys over Seattle. This was the biggest reason why I took the Cowboys. They're getting Ezekiel Elliott back, and if Todd Gurley can have 180 total yards against the Seattle defense, KJ Wright still could be out of concussion. Honestly, Bobby Wagner, he's not himself. And now Earl Thomas and Bobby Wagner are bickering back and forth. I just think this team is too dysfunctional. And yes, Russell Wilson, will he put up a better game than he did against the Rams defense? Yes. But will that be enough to stop the Cowboys offense? I don't think so. Because it's not the Legion of Boom. It's the Legion of Gloom and the Legion of Whom. And I think with Dez, Terrence, and Cole having Zeke back, they're going to have more single coverage opportunities, and they're going to be able to make more plays. And Dak Prescott will be able to make more plays with his feet and look more like the Dak Prescott we've seen throughout his career up until the suspension. And also they're at home. The Seahawks have shown you that against decent quality teams, especially with their injured front, they're not as good as a unit. The Philadelphia game looks like an aberration more so than what was supposed to come. Because if that was the case, they would have been able to beat the Jaguars, and they would have at least been more competitive against the Rams on Sunday. Should be an interesting game because I think Seattle, look, they have some pride, and they still know that they have a playoff chance. If, let's say, the Lions lose to the Bengals or lose to the Packers, and Seattle can win out and the Lions can lose one of their final 2 games. But I just don't see that happening. I see the Cowboys being able to stake their claim and to finish into a very good 10-6 season. I do believe Jason Garrett still should get fired, but they'll have a 10-6 season under their belt to say, even through all the misery and all through the ups and downs, they still were able to be a very good football team that if they were able to make the playoffs, they could surprise the people with how good they are. So that's why I like Dallas here minus 4.5 and Dallas straight up. And then finally, the last 2 games, Steelers over Houston. Houston's awful. And even with Antonio Brown not playing, that doesn't matter. James Conner, he's on IR with an MCL injury. So they signed Stephen Ridley. That doesn't matter either. I'm just going to be interested to see in this game for the Steelers, how are they going to be psychologically? Can they be, competitive or dominate in a way where they win by at least 14 or more points against a Texan team that's just not into it this year? Bill O'Brien's going to be safe. It was his mulligan year anyway. And, again, he said this week, he's not going to resign as head coach of the Texans. Good for him. But next year, he should be able to reach all the benchmarks of a healthy Deshaun Watson. However, if Watson gets hurt again and he has no losing record, you got to let Bill O'Brien go, because you just can't, then you're going to look at Watson's history and go, well, you need to find a quarterback that you can at least be competitive with or contenders with, because you can't just keep using the injury excuse every single year. You can't do it. And again, the Steelers won't need it. They have Juju, they have Jesse, they have Le'Veon. Those three guys enough. And the Texans, again, they may let DeAndre Hopkins go wild, which I'd be concerned about. But if you double team him, or Braxton Miller being out for the year, Will Fuller hasn't really done anything, the Steelers should be able to win the game easily. So that's why I like Pittsburgh minus 8.5 and Pittsburgh straight up. And Eagles over Oakland. The Oakland Raiders are done. The Oakland Raiders look like the Oakland Raiders at the end of the old Oakland Raiders that people did not want to see again. And yes, they got screwed by an index card, but that happens. But also, Derek Carr needs to realize you cannot fumble, and you do not have to dive out of the end zone to get that touchdown. You could say, well, he was trying to win the game, and why are you criticizing him for that? He didn't need to in that spot. They were only down by 3. It wasn't the last second in the Super Bowl where that happened. It was just a regular season game that the Raiders are still trying to hold on to their slight playoff hopes. They still have slight playoff hopes, but they're all essentially, but their hopes are all gone. Where the Eagles, again, I think the reason why I took the Raiders plus 9 is the Eagles' defense has not looked very good over the last few weeks. They gave up 24 to Seattle, they gave up 35 to LA, and they just gave up 29 to the Giants. 2 of those are kind of unacceptable. The Seahawks, Russell Wilson should not have had his career season-achieving moment with that game against the Eagles, who were going into one of the best defenses, and definitely the Giants, who don't have any offense at all besides Sterling Shepard, should not have been able to put up 29 points offensively. And the Raiders still have Carr, they're going to have Crabtree, they have Seth Roberts, they have Jared Cook, they have Cordero Patterson, they have Hudson, they have Osemele. Donald Penn's out for the first time in 10 years with a foot injury, which will be big for the Raiders. But I feel like the Raiders should be able to put up enough points against this Eagles defense, which lost some confidence, and Patrick Robinson to a concussion, to cover the 9 points. So that's why I like Oakland here plus 9, but Philadelphia straight up. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Please check out the other NFL YouTube prognosticators, such as Geo Knows, Hatbox Nation, Andrew Warren, Boomer Devon, TJ Harmon, Keith Bailey, Johnny Bretke, and all those people on the NFL YouTube prognosticators page on Facebook. There are several great people that make these picks just like I do, and we're all trying to be very competitive with each other to see who is the best. Also, shout out to Bridgewater's finest. And that's it. So, good luck to all teams, players, coaches, fantasy players, and fellow prognosticators. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from the Fanatic to you and your family, whoever's watching, and enjoy the holiday season. And until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. So